The city had once been beautiful. Michael could remember when the streets were alive with the sound of children's laughter, when the air didn't reek of smoke and decay. Now everything was crumbling, buildings stood like broken teeth against a gray sky, and rats scurried where people once walked. Disease ruled here. The pandemic had torn through the poor districts first, and no one with power had bothered to stop it. Michael, once a respected mortician, now lived among the ruins, watching the light fade from his son's eyes. Leo was only 8. His small body trembled beneath a thin blanket, fever sweat glistening on his pale skin. Michael sat at his bedside, helpless. He'd done everything, pleaded at clinics, waited in endless lines at government offices, offered to work without pay if they would only give him the vaccine that might save his boy. But at every door he was turned away. The vaccine was for the rich, the powerful, the connected. The poor were left to bury their dead, if they were lucky enough to have someone left to bury them. If you're drawn into this heartbreaking story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to A Bite of Tasty Stories, where we share powerful, unforgettable tales that stay with you. Night after night, Michael watched Leo's chest rise and fall, each breath more labored than the last. The sound of his son's coughing echoed through the empty apartment, louder than the sirens that wailed in the streets. His food had run out days ago. His savings were gone. All he had left was love, and love wasn't enough to buy salvation in this city. Michael stared out the cracked window at the city below. Somewhere, behind guarded gates, men and women dined by candlelight, their children safe and healthy, their cupboards stocked, their vaccines locked away in silver cases. He clenched his fists. What was a good man supposed to do in a world like this? Leo's condition worsened with the passing days. His thin frame shook with every breath, and his eyes, once so full of mischief and wonder, had grown dull and glassy. Michael tried everything: boiled herbs, old remedies whispered by desperate neighbors, even prayer, though he hadn't spoken to any god in years. Nothing eased his son's suffering. On the third night of Leo's decline, as the boy wheezed softly in the dark, Michael stepped out into the bitter cold. His legs carried him without purpose, his mind clouded with fear and helplessness. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, only the lost and the damned wandered this part of the city after sundown. That was when Michael first saw the man. He stood in the shadows of a crumbling archway, the glow of his cigarette briefly illuminating his gaunt face. His eyes followed Michael as he passed, and with a voice like sandpaper scraping stone, he called out, "You're looking for something." Michael stopped. His heart pounded. "What did you say?" The man stepped forward. His coat was ragged but clean, his shoes polished, strange for this part of town. "I know that look. I see it often these days. A man with nothing left to lose. A man who'd do anything for the boy." Michael froze. "What do you know about my boy?" The man smiled, slow and cold. "Word gets around. The mortician with the sick son. The one begging at every clinic, every office. I have what you need." Michael felt his throat tighten. "You have the vaccine?" The man nodded. "I do. And I can get more. But nothing is free." Michael's hope flickered, only to be snuffed out by the man's next words. "I need bodies. Fresh ones. No old drunks. No disease-riddled corpses. Young, healthy. Bring them to me and I'll give you what your son needs." For a moment, Michael couldn't breathe. The city seemed to go silent. Even the wind stopped howling. You want me to kill people?" "I want bodies. What you do to get them, that's your choice." The man dropped his cigarette and ground it beneath his heel. "Your boy's out of time. Think it over." Michael stood there long after the man disappeared into the shadows. His hands trembled. His stomach churned. He told himself he'd never do it. Never. But that night, as Leo's coughing turned to choking, as his tiny hands clutched at the sheets, Michael realized something terrible. Love could make a man consider the unthinkable. Michael returned to the mortuary before dawn, his mind a storm of guilt and desperation. The place smelled of disinfectant and decay, scents that once brought him comfort, the familiar tools of his honest trade. Now they reminded him only of the task ahead. In the cold storage, the unclaimed dead lay in silence. Most were nameless souls, the homeless, the forgotten, the discarded. Michael stood over them, his heart pounding, his breath shallow. His hands shook as he pulled out one of the drawers. A man, perhaps 50, skin sallow, a scar running down his cheek. Michael didn't know his story. He didn't want to. "Forgive me," Michael whispered, though he wasn't sure if the plea was meant for the dead man, for Leo, or for himself. Under the cover of night, Michael delivered the body to the meeting point, the alley behind an old warehouse, where the dealer waited with cold eyes and a waiting van. The transaction was swift. The body was taken, and in exchange, a small vial was placed in Michael's trembling hands. "This will help him for now," the dealer said. His voice was as empty as the streets around them. Michael ran home as fast as his legs would carry him. He administered the vaccine with clumsy fingers, tears streaming down his face. And slowly, blessedly, Leo's breathing eased. His fever broke by morning. For the first time in weeks, Michael felt hope. But it was a hope stained with shame. That night, sleep did not come. When he closed his eyes, he saw the face of the man he had taken. He heard voices in his dreams, accusing, hollow, full of sorrow. The dead did not rest easy. Days later, Michael returned to the alley, seeking another vial. But this time the dealer's smile was thin and cruel. "No more old vagrants," he said. "Next one must be fresh, young, strong. You know where to find them." Michael's mouth went dry. He tried to protest, but the dealer cut him off with a single glance. "You want your boy to live? Then you bring me what I need." As the dealer's van vanished into the night, Michael stood alone, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like a mountain. For a few precious days Michael believed he'd done enough. Leo's cheeks regained a hint of color. His cough softened. His small hand clutched Michael's fingers with a strength that made him weep with relief. But hope was fleeting in this city. By the end of the week, the fever returned, fiercer than before. Leo's body trembled under the weight of it, his breath once again a ragged gasp. Michael knew what had to be done. The man he used to be, the quiet, careful mortician who treated everybody with respect, was gone. In his place stood a father stripped of morality, hollowed out by fear. Under the cover of night, Michael prowled the alleys and crumbling ruins of the city. He found the weak first, the starving, the sick, the ones too far gone for anyone else to care about. He'd offer food, shelter, a warm place to sleep, and they'd follow him, too tired or too hopeful to question his kindness. One by one they disappeared. The dealer was pleased. Each delivery bought Michael another vial, another day of Leo's fragile life. But with every life taken, Michael lost another piece of himself. His eyes grew sunken, ringed with shadow. His reflection in the cracked mirror became a stranger, a gaunt specter with blood on his hands and sorrow etched into his face. He stopped writing in his journal, stopped praying. The man who had once begged the world for help now begged only that his son might see another sunrise. But the city was waking up. Disappearance notices littered the streets, faces printed on scraps of paper, names called out in vain. Mothers wept on doorsteps. Men with hollow eyes searched the alleys for brothers who never came home. And among them was Nina, a young journalist with a fierce heart and a stubborn will. She pieced together what others would not see, the pattern of vanishing souls, the silent predator stalking the city's most vulnerable. Nina's questions began to echo through the streets. Who was taking them? And why? Michael felt the net tightening, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Every vial bought him more time, and every drop of that time was precious. At night, as he watched Leo sleep fitfully, Michael wondered if his son would one day see the monster his father had become, and if he'd understand. Michael had long stopped asking questions. He delivered the bodies, took the vials, and hurried home to his son, telling himself it was all for love. But that fragile lie began to crack the night he followed the dealer's van. Something in the dealer's voice that evening had unsettled him, a casual cruelty in the way he demanded fresh stock, that made Michael's skin crawl. After the handoff, hidden in the shadows, Michael watched the van rattle off into the city's heart. And then, driven by a desperate need to understand what he'd become part of, Michael followed. The van led him to a compound on the edge of the city, high walls, barbed wire, and the glint of security cameras under the moonlight. Michael watched from a distance, heart pounding, as the bodies he'd delivered were unloaded. But there were no doctors waiting. No clinic. No noble cause. Instead, men in expensive suits examined the corpses like cattle. Some were packed into refrigerated trucks marked with false medical logos. Others were taken inside, where muffled laughter and music drifted into the night. Michael saw enough to understand, this wasn't about vaccines. The bodies fed a grotesque trade, organ trafficking, illegal experiments, and sick entertainments for the city's elite. His stomach turned. He had helped create this nightmare. Michael staggered home, bile rising in his throat, grief and shame crashing over him. He vowed to stop, to end the horror no matter the cost. But fate is cruel. That night, Leo's fever spiked higher than ever. His skin burned to the touch. His breath came in shallow, rasping gasps. Michael watched helpless as his son's life slipped through his fingers. And when the dealer came the next night, Michael was waiting. "I want another vial," Michael said, voice hollow, eyes dead. The dealer's smile was sharp and cold. "This time you bring me something special." Michael stared. "The son of a councilman. A rich man's child. Someone who matters. That's the price for the doses that might actually save your boy." Michael said nothing. The dealer clapped him on the shoulder and disappeared into the dark, leaving Michael standing alone with the weight of his choices crushing him. Outside, the city slept, unaware that a father was being asked to become a monster, and that he might say yes. Michael spent the night in silence, sitting by Leo's bedside, watching the boy's shallow breaths, counting each one like a prayer. Outside, the city's sirens wailed, the sound of a world in collapse, a world where fathers became monsters and monsters wore human faces. By morning his decision was made. There was no more line to cross. The dealer's demand echoed in his mind, the son of a councilman. Someone who matters. Michael moved like a ghost through the city, studying his prey. He chose the child of a man whose name filled the newspapers, a wealthy politician who smiled for cameras as the poor died in the streets. If there had to be blood, Michael reasoned, let it be the blood of the powerful. 4 days he watched, planned, waited. His heart felt nothing. No guilt, no sorrow. Only the cold determination of a man who had nothing left. But while Michael stalked the city, someone else was hunting him. Nina had followed the trail of missing souls to its terrible end. The puzzle pieces fit together now. The bodies, the black market trade, the father driven to unthinkable acts. She went to the authorities not with satisfaction but with a heavy heart. The night Michael set his plan in motion, the trap was already laid. In a narrow alley behind a grand estate, Michael waited, hidden in the shadows. He saw the boy approach, the boy he meant to take, and his hands trembled. Then the sirens erupted. Lights flooded the alley. Shouts rang out. Figures emerged from the dark. Officers, Nina, the dealer's men caught in the crossfire. Michael froze. For the first time in months, the weight of what he was about to do crashed over him, and he felt the full horror of it. In that moment of chaos, Michael stepped forward, arms raised. "Stop," he cried. "It's me you want. Take me. Just let my boy live." Nina's eyes met his. In that glance she saw everything, the father, the monster, the man broken by love. The dealer tried to slip away but the authorities closed in. Michael surrendered, offering himself, begging for just one thing, the final doses that could save Leo. And as he was led away in handcuffs, the city's sirens wailed louder than ever, and the father who had sacrificed everything was swallowed by the night. The years passed but the scars of that dark time never faded. Leo survived. The final doses his father had bargained for saved him, though the cost was a shadow that would follow him all his life. He grew up in a city still cracked and broken, where the poor still fought for scraps, and the powerful still dined in their glass towers. But the boy who had once clung to life with fevered breaths had become a man with fire in his heart. It was Nina who told him the truth. She found him when he was old enough to understand, brought him the reports she'd written, the court transcripts, the hidden journals his father had left behind. Leo read every word. He learned of the bodies, the black market horrors, the final sin his father had nearly committed. And as he read, his heart broke again and again. How could he hate the man who had given everything to save him? How could he forgive the monster his father had become? In the end, Leo chose neither hate nor blind devotion. He chose purpose. He dedicated his life to exposing the networks that preyed on the desperate, the same networks that had consumed his father. He spoke in the streets, in courtrooms, to anyone who would listen. He worked to tear down the systems of cruelty that had turned love into a weapon. And though the city remained a place of shadows, a new light flickered, the light of a boy who had lived, determined to give meaning to the sacrifices made for him. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to A Bite of Tasty Stories, where the most unforgettable tales are brought to life.